Levi Thatcher, welcome to the broadcast. Mike Levy, Ethan Taft, and we're thrilled to have Xiao Liu joining us from the University of Utah. She's an assistant professor there. Hi, Xiao. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. This is Xiao Liu. I work at the University of Utah teaching information system and data mining.
We're excited to have you join the program here. We're excited to chat in just a minute about your work in R and healthcare. Just some logistics as we get started. So be sure to sign into the YouTube channel so you can interact with Ethan and so we can bring you into the conversation here. Remember to subscribe to the Healthcare AI channel. Join the Slack team so we can chat more offline during the week and help you out on your projects in machine learning. And also join us in Salt Lake City in September here in just a couple weeks for a machine learning 2-day tutorial given by none other than Mike Levy here. He's been prepping like crazy. We're super excited for it. Google has Summit, and there's a fantastic ML course. We'd love to meet you in person. So today, we're thrilled to chat with Xiao. First off, we're going to take a couple of user questions. And the main one we'll focus on today is actually from a guy named Brandon who said, what are some of the first steps in starting a data science or predictive analytics team in a healthcare organization? That's a big question, and we love the questions. Keep them coming in. So if you're starting an analytics team focused on data science and healthcare, I have a few points here. I'd love to hear your input here. You guys are maybe a little bit newer to healthcare, but if you're trying to get into predictive work at a health system and you don't have any data scientists, a great place to start would be to hold off on hiring anybody. First off, just don't move anybody around, but first make sure you have a couple of boxes checked before you make any main moves. I would say to first make sure you have clinicians or someone in the organization that's excited to use your predictive output. Make sure you have an EDW or a data warehouse and that you know what data marts are and have analysts that can work with data marts. We call them source area marts here at Health Catalyst. But basically you have all these source systems, a health system, you have all these different files and databases, and the EDW and these data marts help you pull in data in a coherent manner to talk about sepsis or CLABSI or readmissions in a coherent way. So you have to know what data marts are. And point number 3 is that you have to have an EDW that has very little downtime. So one thing we ran into is certain health systems out there, they may have an EDW or data warehouse, and it has downtime occasionally, maybe for a couple of days, or maybe they'll have some sort of issue where they run out of space. And if you have clinicians relying on your predictive output and that goes away for a couple of weeks, it's very unlikely they're going to want to come back to your tool or it's unlikely they'll have confidence in your tool over the long haul if it just disappears for a while. Now, any comments or that kind of
I think you said it.
covers the gamut? Okay.
Yeah.
But love the questions, Brandon. Thanks for sending that. If you guys have any questions, throw them into the chat there, and Ethan will monitor that for us. And if you have longer questions that you want to discuss more in depth during the week, throw them into the Healthcare AI Slack channel, and we'll monitor that. And before we jump into the interview, we actually want to do a little bit of an R demo. We try to be hands-on and show you some practical skills such that you can get more into machine learning yourself. Mike Levy's awesome with education, and we'll have him walk us through. Okay, well, we've worked with CSV files before. How do we start interacting with a database in this healthcare AI world?
Yeah. So I'm set up here on a virtual machine where we have a SQL Server database running, and I'll just show how to connect to that using Healthcare AI functionality. So flip over to RStudio and create a new script. First thing I'm going to do is load the Healthcare AI package, which contains the functionality that we want to use. And then I will go to the main Healthcare AI help page. And here we see this first function in the walkthrough is select data. We use select data to pull data directly from a SQL database. And here you can see some details about how this function works. I'm going to just jump down here to this first example, and I'll copy this code out. We've tried to build these examples to make it really easy to take and apply in your own work. So if I copy that and paste it into this script, so I have this connection string that specifies 4 things. So you can see here that this needs to specify the driver, server, database, and whether Windows authentication will be used. We're using a SQL Server. The The server is test here. The database is SAM, and it is a trusted connection. So I run that. That's just a character string. The query, we could make any query that we want to on that database. Let's just take the whole table. So we're going to take this diabetes table from the SAM database. So run that. And then the function that does all the heavy lifting here is select data. So I provide select data with the connection string and the query, and assign that to the variable df. And now if we look at the top of the data frame, we've pulled that data frame into R, and now we're off and running. And now we can start doing analytics. We can go back to this healthcare.ai main help page, and we can start looking at these other functions. So if we wanted to profile that data, get a sense of where there's missingness in the data, do some imputation, we can look at these various functions to do that. Or we could jump into model development here with lasso development or random forest development. So that is the quick and dirty how to pull data in to R from a database using healthcare.ai.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Mike. And so, SQL Server is pretty common across healthcare. That's kind of why we focused on it in this demo. Of course, you may be using MySQL or Oracle, and so this doesn't really apply to those cases. But you can use typical R functionality to pull in data and then compute the data using healthcare.ai for whatever machine learning you want to do. But it's fantastic, like Mike mentioned. So whatever server or database you're pulling from makes it super easy for those cases when you're not pulling from a CSV file. So please, if you have any questions about that, throw them in the chat and the Slack if you want. But thanks, Mike, for running through that.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So we're excited to have Xiao join us today to talk a little bit about our education in healthcare, or just our education period. And Xiao, thanks again so much for joining. We'd love to start out learning a little bit about your background. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got where you are?
Okay, so originally I had my education in computer science and information security. Then I started to get very interested in data mining. So I applied for a PhD program at the University of Arizona. So there I got my training in computational linguistics, which is essentially NLP and machine learning. And then I started to work on a lot of data analytical research projects. So such as looking for drug safety issues from patients' social media data, and looking to reasons for medication non-adherence. So I utilize social media data a lot. So I go to forums, collect the data from them to look at what people talk about, especially healthcare users, customers, patients. What do they say about their experience in using medications? Is there any specific reasons they express in natural language saying why do they stop taking the medications? And also I look into social media platform like YouTube. So a lot of organizations start to use YouTube as for patient education. A lot of useful videos are posted on YouTube so that patients can learn to do their health management or self-care. But also the quality of the YouTube videos are pretty diverse. So there are some pretty bad commercials online, ask patients to purchase some sort of treatments. So our idea is to look into the relationship between patient engagement on YouTube video channel and as compared to the information quality in the video. So that's the research project I'm working on. So basically I do apply machine learning and natural language processing techniques on these data sets and try to get some interesting result from the user-generated data.
That's fantastic. That's so fascinating. What a unique angle to healthcare analytics and analysis. So what other avenues can you use, or what other venues are there besides YouTube for this type of analysis? Like when you're trying to learn about drug use and adherence and all of that, is your research mainly around YouTube or other places as well?
For YouTube, we purely look at the quality and the engagement. So that's core part in patient education. But for medication non-adherence, we utilize a lot of social media platforms like drugs.com and Twitter, and also patient forums. So there are daily strengths, that type of discussion forums, because there are a lot of rich discussions contributed by patients on these sites.
Go ahead.
So do you have partnerships with these sites where you get data from them, or are you doing web scraping to collect the data?
We do web scraping to collect the data.
Wow. That sounds like quite an effort.
But also for Twitter, they have API for us to access the data. But for daily strands, we get IRB exempt saying that information is on open domain and it's not for commercial, it's for research purpose, so we can just use that for research.
That's great.
Wow. Yeah, what a completely unique or different approach to healthcare analysis from what we usually talk about. Usually we're talking about pulling data from EMR and analyzing it, coming to some sort of conclusion. You're going from the more social perspective, which is akin to Mike's background. So how did you get to using R, I guess at ASU when you were there? Did you use R from the get-go, or what was your journey into figuring out that R was a good tool for this sort of web scraping and web analysis?
So for the data analysis I'm doing, I usually rely on Python and R. Python is more on the text processing aspect, but R is a really good tool for data analysis. It has built-in statistical methods, and more importantly, I really like the graphic functions. We can pretty much generate very nice graphs or visualizations on the data with some simple commands. So that's the part I really like for using R in research, because there are a lot of packages in R that facilitates machine learning methods. So that's the part I like about R.
Yeah, so many fantastic features these days. When you got into this research space, were there collaborators that were using R, or was this sort of more of a personal thing or a decision with your group to start using R for this type of work at ASU?
So mostly we use R because it's open source and we don't have to purchase license, and there are a lot of ongoing development on the methods or packages we use. So if we're talking about competitors like SAS and Stata, we have to purchase for license. And I think that's the downside for researchers as well.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we love it here as well. Such easy accessibility, really.
Yeah.
I wish I'd used it more in my grad program. I came into it a little bit more later on when I moved to industry, but wish I had been more aware of the tool earlier on. And how has the transition been? So you're at the University of Utah now. Have you found the tool to be as widely used at the University of Utah as it was at ASU? And tell us a little bit about how you're using R where you're at now.
So besides from doing research with R, I think R is actually a widely accepted language in the business school in various programs. So I teach in the MSIS, which is the Master of Science of Information System, and MSBA, which is the Business Analytics Master Program. So a lot of courses are built around R as a programming language we promote in these programs. So because those programs are designed to provide students with skills necessary to, in the future, to become data science professionals, so we're trying to prepare them with skills and techniques in data analysis, visualizations, and also to develop the mentality of problem solving and apply those techniques into business problems. So I think R, in that sense, is very popular language in our school, at least in those programs.
That's great. So, Xiao, last week we had, I don't know if you've heard of the Insight Data Science Fellowship. It's a program that helps transition PhDs from academia into the private sector. And we were talking to one of their directors last week on this broadcast, and he was saying that there's still a tremendous amount of demand for data science in industry, and PhDs are getting eaten up, but the bar is getting higher too. That companies are increasingly expecting folks to come in with big data skills, with Git and GitHub skills, with database skills. So I'm wondering how do you foster that complete skill set in your students so that they are employable at graduation? And what have you seen as the primary tools that make graduates in high demand?
So my grad school, we have a program starting from basic knowledge in database, how to connect data sets in database with specific programming language, and a set of data analytical trainings such as data mining, more advanced data mining, and natural language processing. And in those courseworks, students are working in project and they're actually getting their hands on to get a data set in the database, connected to it, and do some analytical work like applying machine learning methods on the data sets and create a project presentation which you analyze the data and present the results. So I think that kind of project work is very important to for individuals to develop as a future data scientist. And also, beside the coursework, there are a lot of open opportunities out there. So I like the website Kaggle a lot. And there's a lot of open access data sets that students or interested individuals can choose to work on to get a project and submit their solutions and to see their rankings. So I think that environment is great.
Yeah, Kaggle's a great way to get started in machine learning, get your hands dirty.
It sounds like you take a pretty practical approach there in your program. That's fantastic to hear. So one question I had, so we often talk about MOOCs in this broadcast, and so I'm excited to explore the formal education route for R. So do you come across students that say, well, I'm not a programmer, that's not who I am, that's not my background. How do you get people over that hurdle? Because I feel like that maybe a lot of people are familiar with Excel and find an Excel world, but how do you kind of get them over that hump into the R world where they do have to do a little bit of programming?
So last spring, I taught data mining with R. So in the class, I pretty much assume my students in the class, they have no prior knowledge in R. So basically, I try to give everyone a fresh start of how to do how to use R for data mining. So typically the routine I start with is just start from the fundamentals, just from installation in R and RStudio, and give them a brief introduction about data type and show them how to use the cheat sheet in RStudio and how to use the help command, and also tell them where to ask questions. Because there are a lot of communities like Stack Overflow. If they have any questions, they can just post there and get answers. And also another thing, in classroom, I have the benefit of interaction with students face-to-face. So it is important to construct a very supportive learning environment. So in classroom, we have lab sessions so that we can sit down with the students and write code together. And also we provide tutorial code in R Markdown, which is a very nice format. We can write code and comments and show the results of execute that line of code. What are we expecting? So I figure that's a very good way to help beginners to pick up R as a language. And also we encourage students to work in groups and share good code examples. So they get a chance not to just bury themselves into the difficulties learning the language, but they have the peers to work with them, find solutions to problems together.
That's fantastic explanation. It feels like that's kind of the crux of the formal education route to R. Mike, any thoughts on those two worlds? So with MOOCs, it's maybe cheaper or better for the self-starter, but for those folks that need a little bit of more support?
Yeah, I think one thing that Xiao said that really resonated with me was that idea of creating a supportive environment for the learners to learn in. That when you're starting in a new language or a new anything, you're going to make mistakes, and you have to make mistakes. In order to learn how things work, you have to try stuff, and it might not work, and you try again. And so the learners have to feel comfortable making mistakes and feel supported. And I think that's a lot harder to do online with 10,000 people than it is in a room with 20 or 50 people.
Xiao, that's a great point, both of you. So how do you create that environment where the students are asking each other? Is it such that TAs are there and answering questions, or the students are able to work together and ask each other for help? What do you try to strive for?
So usually we have 1 hour periods in each lecture to ask a student to sit in the classroom. We have a problem. We have a objective to achieve with the data set. And before that, I'm going to give them several piece of tutorial codes, like examples on how to tackle this problem on another data set, and give like procedures, how do we usually tackle this type of problem, so that students get a sense that we have enough materials to start from. And also TA and I will usually in the classroom with the students. So I ask the student to work in pairs, so that they can ask questions when they have any issues. Um, so that's the setup for the lab sessions in the classroom. So students work in pairs, and TA and I would just sit in the classroom and working with students. They can just feel comfortable to ask any questions, because it's not just their questions. It may be questions encountered by other students in the classroom. So I think that works pretty good.
Yeah, a supportive environment is so important where you feel free to ask dumb questions, because everybody has dumb questions at the start. That's one thing we're trying to do at Health Catalyst, is get people to standardize on R and getting this cohort grouped together, both in Slack and in person, such that people know who they can ask questions of and know who to turn to for help. Go ahead.
I think we have a question that kind of goes in right here that will fit nicely. But somebody asked, how can R be integrated into an existing analytics platform? And so going along with it, how can, for people who have knowledge of other programs like SAS or Python or something, how can R be integrated, and how can people learn that in a good way when they have knowledge of?
Yeah, that's a good question. Xiao, any thoughts? Did you start with Python or start with R?
R isn't the first programming language I learned. I start from C and Java and then Python and then R. So I feel a good understanding of how programming is, what is programming, helps my learning in R as well. So if you know the fundamentals of programming and the concept, R is just another syntax you have to pick up. So what are the coding habits of R, and what are the resources you can use, and where to get new packages. So I think picking up R as based on my previous training in Python, Java, and all other programming languages is pretty easy. And also I like R because it offers a lot of opportunities too. It's easy access. You can just access data from multiple database management system, just like Python. And there are a lot of packages help you to do that. So I think it's pretty friendly.
Yeah, it is pretty friendly. It's got a fantastic environment set up for the newbie.
And it's got that interactive element where you can try a line of code by itself and see if it works, see what the results are.
Yeah, immediate feedback is very important.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Xiao, for the folks out there that wanted to get into R and maybe they don't want to do an extra degree or pay a few grand, how can these classes be taken as part of continuing education or audited, or how could somebody take advantage of the more formal university class setup without getting an extra degree? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think the university has the option for students to audit this course. So audit a series of course in the business school. So we have a course called Statistics and Predictive Analytics. So that is a sort of a beginning course for students to pick up R, but that is elective. So if someone's interested in that class is also available for other people who are interested. And also there are a lot of online resources I use. So there are a few R bloggers I usually go to look for good tutorial codes. And also there are GitHub and also Stack Overflow that personally, when I prepare materials for R, I use that a lot. Try to see if there's anyone had a good tutorials for a specific task. And you see a lot of people are trying to just learn something from the community and also contribute their knowledge back by writing a very nice explanation or our markdown file for a specific task, like how to do exploratory data analysis on data set, how to do naive Bayes, let's say that's classification on the data set, and how to interpret that. So I feel there are plenty of resources people can utilize if they want to start to learn R. But I think the most important thing is to pick a subject or a task that they're interested in. Let's say, for example, if someone's very interested in learning data visualizations with R, it would be great if they can just find a data set and try all types of packages and see the effect on this data set. And just to get some practice to begin with, you cannot just start from so many different packages and methods and so many different syntax to learn. But I think it's more effective to be more focused to begin with.
That's a great point. Mike, did you kind of have that same route? Did you have like an environmental focus where you had questions about the environment they were asking?
Mine came through statistics, and that's one of the great ways to learn R is to find a subject that you're interested in, and then you can learn the R almost as a side effect of learning the statistics. And then before you know it, you're writing your own functions and collaborating with other folks and putting code on GitHub.
Yeah, that's a fantastic route. So just to kind of wrap up, we really appreciate you joining us. And for those out there that are looking to use R as a way to get into maybe a better career path, you mentioned things like GitHub and Git. Xiao, any other topics that you cover in your courses that you would recommend that people learn along with R? What's part of that universe?
So I think the feature I like about R is R Markdown. So R Markdown is just document format in R that you can write your code, write your comments, and compile it as a report for someone to present the data to either your employer or your coworker. So I think that is a very nice way to integrate the codes and do explanations, and try to take this R Markdown file as a final report. So I think that's the thing that we really recommend in terms of learning and reporting the results.
Yeah, R Markdown is fantastic. That's a great idea. Ethan just finished a program at the University of Utah not too long ago and recently came to work with Health Catalyst. Ethan, any thought as to things that you had to learn here that you wish you'd learned earlier? Any bridges here?
Definitely. So in school, the focus was on scripting more than it was programming in terms of statistics or data mining. And so something that I've had to pick up more and more as I go is learning how to actually do some functional programming rather than just using scripting language, using already defined functions. And that's something that I wish I would have had more of at the university. And also other tools like Git and GitHub and more SQL in terms of doing statistics with SQL and pulling from databases and things. But it's really hard for beginners to use all those tools at once. But
it's a lot to cover.
Exactly. But if I had to sum it up, I think I'd say more functional programming and not just scripting is something that I would have liked to learn more of.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to convince the Xiaos department to start a package class where you're creating R packages and writing your own functionality.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, because the course setup is just by focus of specific area. Database guys do database, and data mining guys do data mining. But it would be great to have a piece to connect these two together. So how about let's start a project to connect it to the database and pull the data and then do analysis. And also beyond just using simple script function, it will be good to have our programming class actually teach functional programming.
Yeah, I'm sure, Jia, you have time for 4 classes per semester, right? That wouldn't be a problem at all. Awesome. Anything else, guys? Anything in the chat that we should bring up? Things look good?
I think we've covered most of the questions. The question earlier about how to integrate R into an existing analytics platform, any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, that seems like a Slack question, perhaps, where we can kind of go into more depth. I would love if the person, do you have a name there? Maybe we could just say the first name and...
His name was Zhang Jibo.
Zhang Jibo. If you want to drop that in the Slack channel, we could kind of go back and forth on that. It sounds like a little more complicated than we have time for here, but definitely important. Xiao, any anything else you want to add about people getting into R or anything about your work? We really appreciate taking the time.
I think so far I've basically covered the talking points. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you coming on. R is certainly a fantastic tool, and it's free. If people didn't catch that earlier, we're excited to help you get more involved. And Xiao, she's in the Slack healthcare AI team now. If you don't mind, Xiao, checking in there occasionally in case some people send questions your way, we'd appreciate the help.
I'll be happy to answer those questions.
We appreciate it. We're excited to flush out our educational community in the Slack team. So, Xiao, we appreciate you joining us. And everybody else, thanks so much for joining. Thanks, Mike, Ethan. Again, come to Salt Lake in September for our in-person healthcare ML training. And again, sign up for our Slack team, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and send any questions you have our way in the Slack channel. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you for joining us today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, comment below, and click the links below to join our Slack channel and our Healthcare AI community.